The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, May 27th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps and steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Republicans tender a joke of a counteroffer on the infrastructure bill. Meanwhile, Republicans are set to filibuster the idea of a January 6th commission. And while the GOP fears grow over a 2024 Trump run, what they have to do with the Biden DOJ's fighting to protect Bill Barr's meddling in the Mueller investigation. Top doctor in Japan pleads for the Tokyo Olympics cancellation. Climate activists take a step forward in thwarting ExxonMobil's relentless pursuit of lighting the planet on fire. Biden EPA reverses Trump's secret science rule. Democrats in both houses and across the party push for expanded government health care insurance. Biden to name the first slate of ambassadors next week, including LA Mayor Garcetti to India. And the Transportation Security Administration announces that pipelines must inform the government when they suffer cyber attacks. You can file that in How Has This Not Already Been the Case folder that you may have around the house. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. It is Thursday, as you know. And you know what that means? That means that yesterday was Wednesday and tomorrow is Friday. Emma Vigeland, how are you?
I'm well. We had a Knicks victory last night. First Knicks playoff win in 8 years. And it was really, I know I'm a dork, but I was like getting emotional watching these, fans outside of Madison Square Garden. Just the jubilance. And I know, oh, Knicks, they suck. They're so mismanaged. It's a trope, and it's true. But yeah, the city loves the Knicks, and it's got me a little choked up.
Wow, that's very sweet. I wasn't even aware of that trope, really. I just knew they weren't terribly good. But yes, their first playoff, that's good. It's got you in a very good mood. I'm glad to hear that. Mm-hmm. I'm in a bit of a good mood because I feel like we are getting closer to that moment where we're going to start to see where the rubber meets the road, as they say, where the proverbial stuff hits the fan, where things are going to start happening shortly. And that two things have happened today or I should say over the past 24 hours that have edged us closer to this. One is apparent awareness or resolution by the Republicans in the Senate that they are going to filibuster the creation of a January 6th commission. We'll talk about the details of this a little bit later. But they also came back with their much awaited counteroffer to the counteroffer on the infrastructure bill, and it was laughable, like full on belly laughable. And all of this is going to create pressure and gets us closer to the kabuki, to the end of the kabuki theater that we have been witnessing, which is the Biden administration attempting to negotiate with Republicans who have absolutely no desire to come to an agreement on just about anything with the Biden administration, a stated lack of desire. And the Biden administration has been engaging in this kabuki theater as a way of placating the concerns, the demands, the own kabuki theater, the narrative building that some moderates want. We're going to talk about all of this in a bit. But here are the Republicans also becoming aware that we are getting to at least the beginning of a new phase in the passage of an infrastructure bill, which is likely to mean that Republicans aren't going to be participating in this, and they are trying to figure out what their talking points are going to be when it comes to not wanting to sign on to a desperately needed help for our physical and societal infrastructure. Here is Mitch McConnell saying that Democratic spending is going to hurt America. Here's that now.
The Democrats' hard left turn has already hurt our economy. But they still seem to think that massive bill should only actually just be the appetizer. Just the appetizer. The administration proposed a total of about $7 trillion. $7 trillion of spending in its first few months in office. That absurdly overpriced COVID package would actually be the cheapest of the three massive bills Democrats actually want to pass. For some perspective, about $7 trillion is considerably more money in inflation-adjusted terms than America spent fighting and winning World War II. The Biden administration wants to tax, borrow, and print more money than America spent on World War II to finance a grab bag of miscellaneous liberal programs that would further jack up prices on the things families actually need to buy. It took less money to win a global war than these Democrats want to spend on a hodgepodge of stuff like electric cars and welfare programs. $7 trillion. $7 trillion of mediocre socialism and liberal social engineering. No serious expert thinks this is what our economy actually needs. No wonder. Larry Summers says he's concerned that these proposals are, quote, substantially excessive.
There's the kicker.
Dear.
Way overdoing the requisite response, end quote. The sooner this administration can get the memo, the more bipartisan progress we'll be able to make, and the better off working families will be.
Oh, that was just so delicious. And, you might say that the first part of his speech was the appetizer, and the real hearty meal was the Larry Summers name drop.
Well, the Larry Summers is the giveaway here. This is a speech not meant for the Republican Party. This is a speech that is meant for the Beltway media, because the Republican Party has completely lost its ability to leverage that old talking point about deficits. You notice he didn't even say the word deficit. right? I mean, it used to be deficit hawkery was the way that they would attack a bill like this, but it is no longer operative. The deficit hawkery on the right is completely gone. It was totally jettisoned. It was always fictional in many respects. But
it's not tenable anymore. The media has decided that this big of a lie about deficit, concern, they're not going to go along with it in the post-Trump era. So they've kind of have to abandon it. I mean, they beat that dead horse to death.
The problem is that the Republicans abandoned it during Donald Trump. And therefore, it became untenable for the press to maintain that fiction. There was no Paul Ryan there to pretend like the deficit was important. Pete Peterson has since passed away. Nancy Pelosi was attacked for her pay-go pushing. There's still a little bit of that pay-for knee-jerk response within the Democratic Party. Part of it is a function that this is going to have to be passed through reconciliation. It's the only way, and those are some reconciliation rules. But as a political matter, Mitch McConnell knows there's no appetite for this in the Republican Party. He needs to basically try and scare senators, I guess, and people in the administration as to the existence of some type of band of experts. But the point is that Larry Summers has also now been equally debunked as essentially a voice in the Democratic Party. He attempted a month or two ago to throw a wrench in the COVID relief bill. It failed because he was mad that he was not picked to be in the Biden administration. Everybody knew it in these circles, narrow circles that Mitch McConnell's trying to speak to. And so there is no toehold. There is no toehold ultimately. And this is going to become more relevant when we start to talk about why it is going to be a fight within the Democratic Party about the infrastructure bill rather than one outside of the Democratic Party. So that's the first act, or the first, the one, that's the jab, if
that's
you will.
the appetizer.
That's the appetizer. And
I would not want to watch him eat food. Just the thought about,
and that's also just
he lifts up his neck and then it goes in there, right? Kind of like some sort of Star Wars
and then it just dissolves
situation, right?
No, but he would not be saying the word appetizer if this was meant for the public at large, right? He was talking to inside the Beltway. Here is Ron Johnson trying to talk to outside the Beltway. Remember, Ron Johnson sees his support amongst the QAnon Republican Party, which is a vast majority. We're talking 50-60% of Republicans believe that Donald Trump is actually still the president, or is actually the real president. These are Ron Johnson's people. And here is his attempt. And it is also going to fail. But listen to this.
There's a manufacturer I talked to in Wisconsin. Average wage that he's offering is $20 an hour. He's got 1,000 jobs that are not going to be filled, that he can't fill. In Wisconsin, our unemployment rate is at 3.8%. So again, commodities will go up and down, but as that labor shortage, which by the way is created by government action, we're flooding the marketplace with dollars, personal savings, pent-up demand. That's going to fuel inflation. But the fact that we have incentivized people to stay on the sidelines, not engage in the labor market, and not offer their services is going to drive up the price of labor. That doesn't go up and down. That only ratchets up in one direction. Now, you may say that, hey, that's good. If you get a 5% wage increase, it's not very good, though, if prices go up 6 or 7%, which is what we're on a trajectory to achieve. That is sticky inflation. That's here to stay. And my concern is that creates an expectation of future inflation. And I know I'm reading articles saying there's no way we could ever return to stagflation. I'm seeing the conditions. I'm seeing the ingredients being concocted here for potential stagflation.
All right, first off, everything he is saying is everything he says in that first half of the statement contradicts everything else. And at one point he starts to realize, like, wait a second, I'm proposing that people get a 5% bump in pay. That's not great because we're going to have inflation that's going to be greater than that. Now, what we have is a situation where, yes, demand has increased. I think it was Macy's and a couple other department stores have seen the number of shoppers in just the past 2 weeks shoot up by 45% or something. We are now at the lowest level of unemployment claims that we've had since going through COVID. It is dropping. It's still a lot, 400,000 new people seeking claims, which cuts against the idea that we are out of the woods in terms of unemployment.
Although, I mean, those numbers contradict what McConnell was just saying about how we're seeing these effects in the economy. But
right, the economy is getting better. Like the idea that there's increased demand, it's really just a question of our production capacity, which was everybody shut down because of COVID. Once that gets back up to speed, and that supply matches the demand, we're going to be fine. So the inflation, there's no reason to believe this inflation is going to last. However, there's probably going to be a little bit of inflation when it comes to labor, which means that people are going to get paid more. And frankly, to the extent that there's inflation, you've got $1.5, $1.7 trillion worth of student debt out there. If you're holding some of that student debt, if you owe that money, a little bit of inflation is going to be exactly what you want. I mean, for people who have borrowed money, which is a lot of Americans, inflation's not necessarily a bad thing at all. And so he's sitting there worried about stagflation, which, as a reminder, means that there's no economic growth, but prices go up. But here he is leading off with saying that there's this huge demand out there. And so if there's this huge demand and people start to come online with their production and their supply, how do you have a stagnant economy in that situation?
Well, you don't. So I mean, you're exactly right. Like the stagflation concerns are completely made up. I mean, there's not any scenario in which that is going to happen in the coming months / years. You can talk about inflation all you want, but that concern is overblown, as we've seen even like center lib type economists, like, the people in the Biden administration, Janet Yellen, for example, they've found that those concerns are not that important. It's not going to be determinative of any kind of growth in the economy or lack thereof. And so this is the pivot, though, that you're talking about, Sam.
This is the pivot. This is from deficits. It was the deficit era of the past, multiple decades, coming to heights in the Obama era. And now we're in the inflation era of Republican fear-mongering about government spending. To be fair, they also were fear-mongering about inflation in the wake of the 2008 crisis, when we were hearing about quantitative easing 1 and 2 and quantitative easing 3. And Glenn Beck is in front of his blackboard and saying that we are Weimar Germany. And David Stockman, the former budget Office of Management budget under the Reagan administration, was saying that we are just months away from China basically foreclosing on us. And all of that failed to come.
Because that's how that works, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about Ron Johnson, their last thing to say about him is there may be a reason why no one you're reading is saying there's any validity to the fear of stagflation. And that is because maybe there's just no validity to the fear of stagflation. But they're going to try, they're going to fish around, they're going to muddle through this. And we're going to hear a lot of these stories about, 1,000 jobs that would come to your local town if it wasn't for the fact that people were demanding more than $20 an hour or $22 an hour because of how generous the unemployment benefits will be. That I think is going to fall on deaf ears, because you've got people who are like, I'm getting that money, or those people are spending it in my store, or they're spending it at my business. So, I mean, that money's going somewhere. The people who are getting unemployment checks are not just fattening up their personal savings. They are using it to live and to pay for rent and to pay for the food. So,
I mean, that's documented. But, you know, maybe they're just putting it under their mattress, Sam, just because, even though they can't make rent or they're not able to buy groceries for their kids, maybe just for fun, they're burying it in the backyard.
Could very well be. That could be the big problem that we're seeing, except for he's also saying there's a huge amount of demand out there.
Yeah.
All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more after this. Folks, just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Your membership supports the free show, gets you the free show free of commercials, also gets you the fun half, and also makes it possible for us to say, hey, we don't like that advertiser, or we do like that advertiser, but we can't support them anymore because we found out that they're doing production. I'm just harping on that because that's why we didn't have an ad yesterday, and why we'll only have 2 tomorrow. But be that as it may, it is our members who allow us to keep on keeping on, as it were. So become a member today. Join themajorityreport.com. Also check out the Discord, majoritydiscord.com. Check it out. We've got a great, thriving community of Majority Report listeners. It's a great resource for a ton of different things, not just conversation, but also, where can you get, where can you start doing, I don't know, mutual aid, or how can I get involved in politics in San Antonio? I'm making up the San Antonio part. I'm maybe, but somebody should go into the Discord and do that.
John, potentially.
Yes, there you go. All right, folks. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. And lastly, AM Quickie. Check out the AM Quickie every morning, 6-7 minutes in the morning. It's there when you wake up, unless you wake up super early, and gives you a sense of what the day is going to look like. All right, a couple of stories that want to touch on that you may not hear in other places. First off, you hopefully have heard, at the very least, that there's some legal action going on with the former president. Now, this is an interesting situation. There's a lot of stories out there right now. Trump is supposedly, according to Politico, confiding in allies that he intends to run again in 2024 with one contingency, that he still has a good bill of health. I mean, he bought one last time, so I'm sure he could get one if he wants to this time. So Trump is going to be there, and what that's doing is creating a cascading effect on a bunch of things. It's implicating the January 6th commission. It is also, that could end up providing at least some impetus for filibuster reform. We'll talk about that in a bit. But the other thing that it's doing is it's putting, this is an odd, just put a pin in that. It's creating an odd disincentive for the DOJ. And I will explain. You've heard the story, obviously, that on Tuesday night, the Manhattan District Attorney convened a special grand jury to hear evidence in the investigation, the criminal investigation of the Trump Organization. This is after we heard that the New York State Attorney General was working with that same Manhattan DA on possible criminal case in addition to the civil case they're working on. It's just a matter of time before we heard about the special grand jury. But one other thing that sort of got lost at the beginning of the week was the ongoing court cases that are coming out of a federal judge who both handled the Manafort case and this is, I'm talking about Amy Berman Jackson. She's U.S. District Court, and looking into the way that the Mueller investigation was handled writ large. All of these things are tied together. And this judge is rather upset about what she was told by the Justice Department and the actions of the Justice Department in terms of why the Mueller investigation did not charge the president with a crime of obstruction. This is, and so she has been calling for the release of this memo. In fact, she asked the Justice Department to provide it. The present Justice Department under Merrick Garland has now filed a motion to basically prevent the release of this memo. It is a 2019 memo written in March. It was written by two senior Justice Department officials who are with the Office of Legal Counsel. This is sort of the government's lawyers essentially assessing what is and is not. They're doing interpretations of the law. So the Office of Legal Counsel can be really abused. John Yoo famously wrote a memo justifying the torture regime under the Bush administration from the Office of Legal Counsel. According to Amy Berman Jackson, she issued an opinion earlier this month saying that she had read the memo. She wants it publicly released. And she says it showed that Barr was disingenuous when he cited that memo as key to his conclusion that Trump had not broken the law and should not be charged. She said further, the reason why he was disingenuous is because department lawyers, the Justice Department, essentially lied to her about the internal discussions that surrounded the memo. So the present Justice Department, out of fear of politicizing their department and maintaining the sort of institutional integrity, is defending these lawyers or that memo, protecting it from being released. They released 2 pages of it, a partially unredacted version.
Although the redacted part seems to be the
meat.
Well,
the parts that they didn't reveal are obviously the ones that she wants to be made public. And here's what's going on here. This is a part of the memo. Over the course of the special counsel's investigation, this is written by Steve Engel, who is the head of the departments of OLC, and Edward O'Callahan, who was a senior department official who was involved in supervising the Mueller investigation. It was addressed to Barr, and there's a little bit of CYA here. Cover your you-know-whats. Over the course of the special counsel's investigation, we have previously discussed these issues within the department among ourselves, with the Deputy Attorney General, and with you since your appointment, as well as the special counsel and his staff. Our conclusions are the product of those discussions, as well as our review of the report. This is the key. Bill Barr made his decision supposedly, and as he told the judge and as he told the American public, by taking input from the Office of Legal Counsel. But what is clear from this memo, and I imagine be made even more clear if we saw the redacted part, was that Bill Barr was part of developing the theory of why they shouldn't charge it. And this is...
And the theory in and of itself, right? The reasoning for not charging Trump is the bulk of what is redacted.
Exactly. And there are two elements. One is the longstanding position by the OLC that a sitting president cannot be prosecuted. However, this same memo says, but you can bring charges. You just can't prosecute them. You can't say whether or not you would bring charges. And then they find in this memo that the president, according to what they surmise from the report, should not be charged with obstruction. However, they've left a clue here just to cover themselves. Just a reminder, Attorney General Bill Barr, you helped us come to this opinion that we are now giving you, and what you are now saying is what you relied on. So in other words, Bill Barr relied on the work product that was heavily influenced by his own opinion to formulate his ultimate opinion. This is like the functional equivalent of Dick Cheney leaking to a former New York Times reporter that Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. That New York Times reporter writing it in the New York Times, and then Dick Cheney going on Meet the Press and saying, I'm just quoting the New York Times, which says that there's evidence of weapons of mass destruction.
And the incentive that you reference at the beginning for the Biden DOJ is to protect this kind of now proven to be, I guess, not false, but shaky firewall between the OLC and the DOJ. So like, this is a lesson in that no matter how extreme the Trump administration was, the Biden administration is going to cover up essentially their exploitation of the institution's lack of I guess morality is not the right word, but
just ethics.
Ethics, right?
And yes, I mean, this is an ongoing theme, right? When dealing with the Republicans, and that is they are abusing the system. And the question is, how do you fight that? Do you fight that by maintaining the integrity and the depoliticization of the Justice Department, or even the perception? I mean,
that's the perception, because they know. Yes. Go on.
This is, that's the point, is that they know it's just a perception, because it would not be a politicization of the DOJ to say, okay, we can release this memo because Jackson, the judge, wants to release it publicly because it shows there has been nefarious malfeasance by the former attorney general. The judge's opinion concluded that rather than Barr following the OLC advice, his decision and the OLC memo were being written by the very same people at the very same time. In other words, he was involved in writing the advice that he supposedly followed. Let me read one more. Not only was the attorney general being disingenuous then, but the DOJ has been disingenuous to this court with respect to the existence of a decision-making process that should be shielded by the deliberative process privilege. In other words, that the DOJ, even in trying to maintain the lack of release of this memo, is being disingenuous because the deliberative process wasn't in itself disingenuous, and therefore does not deserve the protection that the OLC and the Justice Department claims it does. The judge also found claims made by the department to try and shield the memo from public scrutiny are so inconsistent with the evidence in the record, they are not worthy of credence. and said the department sought to obfuscate that it had set out to create a legal justification for a decision department leaders had already made, which is to not accuse the president of a crime. In other words, they had what they wanted to find, and then they basically said, we're going to create a process that will lead us to that decision we've already made.
I mean, the Biden administration's, attitude here is very reminiscent of when Obama came into office, came on the campaign, hot off the campaign trail, critiquing the Bush administration's massive amounts of abuses, and did very little to roll back in any structural way the lack of oversight and laws that allowed for those abuses to happen, because Democrats' attitude is we want the option to be able to use these kinds of fluid parameters or the fluidity of them to our advantage if we want to do so. And they often will do so. It's not going to be so nakedly corrupt as, say, the Trump administration or the Bush administration, but they have an incentive to maintain the fiction in themselves, because, say, Biden needs to use the OLC at some point for some purpose. You don't want to kind of expose that, oh, wow, there isn't this, siloed process that we're pretending that there is. So there is, one hand washes the other a little bit here in maintaining a fiction.
That's possible. And it's also just sort of the failure to understand that upholding some principles about the and protect the institution doesn't work if it only is applied one half of the time. I mean, we see this with the institutionalists in the Senate, the hesitation supposedly. And I think there was there have been in the past, I think, a significant percentage of the senators who are just institutionalists. I mean, I'm not defending that position, but I think it was a genuine perspective. And it took far too long for them to understand that, look, the institution's being abused, and you are holding up some type of vision that doesn't exist. And you are not going to salvage the institution by applying applying these principles in overly timid ways. Yes, there is a danger that people will see a Department of Justice that releases the memo from the OLC from the prior administration as being politicized. But to a certain extent, if what they were doing was nefarious, you got to do it. But I also think that you're right. They're protecting the privilege for themselves in the future, because you never know what they're going to want not to be released, with the next set of, but if they think that the next Donald Trump would not release memos in this instance, I mean, they did, right? I mean, they did. They released who uncovered, who had access to the Pfizer reports. I mean, they've done this, and they're going to do it anyways.
I know. And it's amazing to me how Democrats like Biden, who fetishize institutions, especially the Senate in Biden's case, right? When those institutions are rolled back or significantly injured by Republican exploitation, there's incredible reluctance to restore, which is bizarre to me, if that's kind of one of your guiding principles.
Yep. All right, let's move on to, and we'll circle back around to the filibuster and the infrastructure in just a moment. But this is an interesting story. There was a fight for board members who sit atop the ExxonMobil board. And this is the first time, it's my understanding, that something like this has happened. The Exxon board, essentially, or C-suite, they nominate a bunch of people to sit on the board, a bunch, 10, 12. And they do so because they want to make sure that the board members are on board, literally and figuratively, with the broad agenda of the company, which is to pull as much and extract as much fossil fuel from the ground as they can before government regulation sets in, or whatever parameters it is. And this has been ongoing, I guess, for a while. A hedge fund named Engine Number One, which was set up, and they would argue that it's really just that it isn't about ideology. This is according to Chris James, is quoted in the New York Times. It's about economics. Founder of Engine Number One said in an interview, "And economics is what has driven the adoption of some of the alternative fuel sources versus fossil fuels. We want there to be an acceptance of change." So Engine Number One teamed up with a bunch of big pension funds, including the New York State Common Retirement Fund and the California Public Employees Retirement System. And Engine Number One, which owns less than 1% of Exxon stock, began its campaign, I guess, about 4 or 5 months ago. And they got 2 of their candidates voted on to the board. And these candidates are people who believe that that ExxonMobil should turn their attention to alternative sources of energy. Exxon tried to head off the dissident investors, which apparently have included some descendants of John D. Rockefeller, who founded Standard Oil, which ultimately became Exxon. And there are 2, I guess, board seats that are still extant that they still may win. I'm not sure what the election process is, but Exxon last week was trying to convince shareholders not to vote for these dissident board nominees. They said it would add 2 new directors to the board later this year, including a climate expert. One can only imagine what where that climate expert would come from.
The climate expert is just like a longtime Exxon executive, except with Groucho glasses on. So,
Yep. But this hedge fund, Engine Number One, I don't know much about it other than it was started in, fairly recently, last year, presumably maybe to do this type of thing. And this is a big deal. It's a big deal because once you basically prevent these companies from pursuing certain business practices, we've talked about this in the past. This is, we need legislation. We need administrative help from the president, but we also sabotaging these companies or undercutting their agenda to extract all this oil. Also part of the repertoire. We should say, speaking of things going in the wrong direction, during the Trump administration, the Trump White House signed off on an oil and gas project on the North Slope of Alaska, which will supposedly produce more than 100,000 barrels of oil a day for the next 30 years. You'll recall that Biden is talking about pivoting this country away from fossil fuels, having emissions by 2030.
But pivoting in like a slow motion kind of Michael Jackson kind of way, right? Like
apparently that pivot is really
yeah.
slow. I mean, it's almost like it's almost as if he's just sort of like put on a pair of, I don't know, rollerblades and just letting the earth spin as a way of him pivoting.
It's a beautiful image.
Thank you. The project known as Willow is a multi-million-dollar plan from ConocoPhillips to drill in part of the National Petroleum Reserve. And the Biden administration could either have declined to defend the oil drilling or support a federal decision backed by the state of Alaska, which apparently some tribal nations as well. This is from the New York Times. Union and key officials, including Lisa Murkowski, who is a moderate Republican senator, somehow the Biden administration thinks will be some type of ally somewhere. I don't know in what context that could possibly happen, but they have decided that the Interior Department has said that the Trump administration decision complied with the environmental rules in place at the time, that the plaintiffs did not challenge the approval within the time limitations associated with the environmental review projects for the National Petroleum Reserve. So just a technicality. Conoco plans to install chillers into the permafrost, which is fast melting because of climate change, to keep it solid enough to support the equipment to drill for oil. In other words, it's a race between climate change and the ability of ConocoPhillips to prevent climate change from happening in this very small area that will support its drilling thing. And then they will pull the oil out, burn that oil, obviously, after they sell it, which will then contribute to the climate change that they are fighting to continue to drill that oil. I mean, that is...
It is absolutely fanciful that gaining Murkowski's favor in any way, fine, say she's indebted to you, right? Say she's indebted to the Biden administration. I'll give you that complete fiction. You need 60 votes for anything outside of reconciliation. So are you going to allow for oil drilling in 9 other states, or are you going to give away massive campaign promises in order to win over Lamar Alexander or whatever the other senators are? I mean, like, there is zero benefit to currying Murkowski's favor. Can you come up with?
I can come up with one scenario.
What?
And it is fantastical and completely hypothetical and even more improbable, but it is someone defects from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party, then Lisa Murkowski defects to the Democratic Party. Highly unlikely, almost totally unimaginable, but that's the only possible scenario I could imagine that this would have, what the value of this would be. Maybe they think there is value in having a failure to, I don't know. I mean, maybe the
filibuster reform. Has she said no, right? She's not gonna reform the filibuster.
I don't know. The only thing I do know, she's getting a Trumpy challenge in her primary. I don't know how worried she is about it. Republicans last time around ditched her a little bit. And so, she went in as that write-in. I don't know. But, man, I hope, I mean, I can't imagine. It's hard for me to imagine what would be worth it unless somehow she ended up voting and was the deciding vote in, the Green New Deal. And I can't work out a scenario. I don't have the brain capacity to work out a scenario where that would be the case. But if it was, then I'll be the first one to eat my, hat. I don't know what hat.
You're not a hat guy, are you?
I wear a lot of baseball caps.
Oh, really? I've never seen you in one.
Well, I mean, I don't wear it on the show.
Well, that's usually where I see you. Yes.
That's right. Let's all right, let's just turn to what's going on with the infrastructure. Here is Senator Shelley Moore Capito describing the Republican counteroffer to the infrastructure. Honestly, this, I don't know the last time I smiled this broadly over a Republican proposal, because this is hilarious that it even constitutes a counteroffer. Let's play this clip, number 4.
Where are we? Senate Republicans continue to negotiate in good faith. We've had a lot of good dialogue with the White House. We're trying to get to that common goal of reaching a bipartisan infrastructure agreement that we talked about in the Oval Office with the president several weeks ago, and I talked with him even previous to that. We believe that this counteroffer delivers on what President Biden told us in the Oval Office that day, and that is to try to reach somewhere near $1 trillion over an 8-year period of time that would include our baseline spending. We have achieved that goal with this counteroffer. But we've also, I think, done something that has stayed true to what our beliefs are when we very first started this this endeavor, and that is sticking to core physical infrastructure.
I mean, just absolutely hilarious.
Oh yes, we're back at the core physical infrastructure, right? Because this is what's important to the American public. Everyone's individual definition of what they believe falls under the infrastructure umbrella. Like, I'm already feeling the entire country fall asleep as I speak.
Indeed. And just to be clear, what they drop out of their bill, well, is just about everything. But it is the primarily one of the big things is $400 billion worth of elder care, because Americans don't want or need any care for their elders in this country. That's not infrastructure. If it helps support the family, it is not infrastructure. The only thing that infrastructure that constitutes infrastructure is, of course, filling potholes, period, end of story. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about what is in this this deal for infrastructure. It is hilarious. We'll be right back after this. Okay, so we're talking about the infrastructure. You'll recall that Joe Biden's got 2 tranches of infrastructure bills, right? The first tranche, Emma loves it when I say tranche. I'm not exactly sure why, but
no, I mean, you have some tendencies, and I smile when you say certain words. Stunning, tranche. Yeah,
it is a tranche. It is.
I didn't say anything. I didn't break up the segment. You did. Keep going.
The first tranche is a $2.3 trillion first cohort segment of an infrastructure bill that, like I said earlier, includes $400 billion worth of elder care. It includes things like electric charging stations across the country for to enhance the production of electric vehicles. It involves obviously building high-speed rail and providing money for public transit across the country. Also, roads and bridges and all of that good stuff, and airports. Money for broadband internet around the country. And so it was last week, the Biden administration. And you remember when Capito initially came out, she said, like, well, we're thinking about $600-700 billion. And someone said, well, why that number? And they're like, it just sounded like a good number. Biden went from 2.3 trillion last week to $1.7 trillion. We don't know the details of what they were leaving out at that point. Maybe it was some lowering it across the board, removing some items, which involved like incentives for manufacturing, et cetera, et cetera. And the idea was that maybe we'll put that in a different bill that Democrats will pass through reconciliation. And then it was floated that the Biden administration might be interested in going down to $1 trillion. So the Republicans come back with a counteroffer unveiled this morning, which totals $928 billion over 8 years. So that is, on first blush, You're like, oh, well, I mean, Biden was willing to come down to $1 trillion, which of course is less than half of what he originally proposed. And they're almost willing to come up to $1 trillion. That in and of itself I would suggest would be a disaster unless there was really some genuine interest in the Democratic Party to go and pass the remaining stuff through reconciliation, which I think is dubious. But when you hear the details of this $928 billion, it becomes a total joke. The $928 billion includes only new spending of $260 billion. The rest either is included in what normally is spent on infrastructure in the budget that gets passed every year, or money that hasn't been spent for the COVID relief bill. So really, their counteroffer to the $1 trillion or $1.7 trillion turns out to be $260 billion.
Yeah, it's like the equivalent of, to borrow McConnell's, analogy, Biden is proposing a meal, and they're essentially scrapping together leftover salami from a sandwich from a week ago and saying, oh, this is a new meal that I cooked for you. And that's kind of what it is, because it's just leftovers or what you would normally have, like lying around. That's the extent of it. And they're trying to repackage it into something sexier. But like, hopefully this is all performative, right? I mean, hopefully even the $1 trillion going down to that by Biden is performative.
We got to sign off, but tomorrow when we talk to Alex Perrine on the program, wrapping up the week, we're going to get deeper into this. But what we have been witnessing is this kabuki theater, and everybody knew it was going to go this way, and hopefully the Biden administration knew it too. And hopefully this has all been about Joe Manchin having the ability to say, I guess the Republicans are just not going to be a partner in this. And part of that ties into their filibustering the January 6th commission. We will talk more about this tomorrow on the program, because it is setting up the next 2 or 3 months as being the most important 2 or 3 months, I think, in the entire Biden administration. Until then, we will see you then, folks. Thanks for joining us on Peacock. And for those of you who are joining us everywhere else, which is a lot more places, going to head into the to the fun half. I just saw Chardonnay Socialist IM'd. The new name of my indie rock band is Stunning Tranche. Who's in?
I love
Stunning. Do I say Tranche?
Do you say tranche?
No. Do I say stunning? Do you hear me say stunning? Because stunning, I used to, it would be like the only thing I would say 90% of the time.
Yes, you still say it.
Okay, thank you.
It's taken a lesser role, though, I feel like, over time.
Yeah. Bender will be able to tell you. I used to say stunning all the time, right?
Sam just asked if he says stunning.
You say, I say stunning all the time now because of you. I heard you say it every day for, I don't even know how many times per day. It's insane.
Yeah.
Same with unbelievable. Just delivered like that too. Unbelievable.
All right. Well,
Yeah, as somebody who used to clip the videos, that used to be my point of where I end it all the time. I just wait for Sam to say unbelievable, and then it's like, all right, that's the end of the video. So if you just scroll to the end of like probably 75% of our YouTube clips, it's Sam saying unbelievable or that's stunning.
Well, and I would say the 75% of clips that were made before you got there, Matt, were also ending with unbelievable. That was my end point too.
I don't think I say stunning as much anymore. I think part of it is because I'm more numb, and so I'm not as stunned, or I can't sense that I'm stunned.
Gotcha.
Right, folks. Don't forget. Can people not find the YouTube stream today? What's going on?
No, that's a one-off case. The YouTube stream is up and doing great.
Okay.
It's doing great.
All right. Sam Seder simp. I'm sorry. Not much of a simp if you can't find the YouTube stream when everybody else can.
Blind simp.
All right, folks. Just a reminder, join themajority report.com, AM Quickie. the majority Discord, et cetera, et cetera. Also tune into Nomi Show today, youtube.com/The Nomiki Show, youtube.com/The Nomiki Show. Matt Binder, let's start with you. What's happening on Doomed?
Well, there will be a show tonight. Sometimes things come up and people have to cancel last minute. So there will be a show tonight.
No kidding. No kidding.
Right. I recall back in the day.
Well, it happened today.
Oh, it did?
Yeah. What are you going to do? Stunning.
Well, anyway, there will be a show tonight, youtube.com/Matt Binder. And if you missed the live stream show, you can go to doomedcast.com afterwards and catch the podcast version of the show. And it'll be a good one, I assure you. I'll let you guys all know as soon as I know, but there will definitely be a show tonight at youtube.com/Matt Binder at 9 p.m. Eastern time.
Unbelievable. And Brandon Sutton, what's that? Is there going to be a discourse?
There absolutely is going to be a discourse this week. There was one last week as well for all the haters and fans alike. And we actually had a great interview up on the Twitch channel yesterday with Black Left AF. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can use that. Can I use the AF abbreviation on your show, Sam, or is it too spicy?
Well, no. AF.
Okay, yeah. So we, had a great interview with Black Left AF on Twitter on the live stream yesterday. You can go check that out on Twitch as well. So, we're doing big things all over the place.
IKEA and Subscribe asks, with regard to Sederisms, what is the meaning of to lose the thread? Well, that's not a Sederism. That is a widely used
lost
idiom.
The plot is what they say in the UK, I think.
Right. Lost the plot. Lose the thread is got to do with basically, when people leave comments or when you get a series of emails and you're following the narrative and then all of a sudden you can't.
No, the IMer was just trying to take the first bite out of the apple.
Matt Leck, what's happening in the Matt Leckian universe?
Yeah, tonight, 8 Eastern, Left Reckoning, YouTube. We'll be talking to Jathan Sadowski of the This Machine Kills podcast. He's also the author of Too Smart, which is about basically digital capitalism and data and all that stuff. I think the smart version of the Zuboff book. Which would just be my editorial. And we'll also be talking about Luddism and how I am a Luddite. I confidently say that. And also we'll be talking about Joe Biden and BDS. So that's tonight, 8 Eastern, patreon.com/Left Reckoning to get the post game.
All right, folks. These guys will see you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul. I had my my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're not paying.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
Do.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
We are back. Brandon is gone.
Perfect timing. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I'm here, though. That should be the most important, right? I mean, I'm here.
Yes. Thanks for joining us today, Binder, and you are the call king today.
Oh, I'm doing it?
Yes.
Okay, no problem.
The call king.
Control.
We should have like some fanfare for that.
A little bit of a heads up would have helped, but I'll do it right now.
No one expects to be the call king.
Yes, I mean, you have to step up to the plate once, you know.
It's a call-in, they say.
Right.
It's
your
no problem.
It's your divine right, honestly.
Let me just set this up here. We got, all right, the right mic, the right speaker, and now I'm called in. Boom. So if we already got callers, shall I take a call? Should we kick off with a call?
Let's kick off with a call king.
All right.
Say that 5 times fast.
410. What's your name? Where are you calling from? This is the Call King.
I am the Call King. It is Nathan from Maryland.
Hey, how you doing, buddy? What would you like to talk about today?
I'm doing medium. Little stress
okay.
by world events, especially in Palestine right now.
Right.
And what I'm calling in to talk about is I know that you guys have covered this issue very, very well for the past couple of weeks or so.
Well, thank you.
And there's a certain extent to which it's super important, if for no other reason, than when we look back and see the Biden administration's arms deal actually go through because he went around Congress. It's important that there's somebody out there who's telling the truth and actually pointing out that, yes, the massacres are happening and they are wrong. But the reason I'm calling in now to talk about it is because it's so important to stress now that the daily bombings have subsided a little bit with the ceasefire, if you can call it that. There's still families being expelled from Sheikh Jarrah. The siege of Gaza is still suffocating 2 million people. And this is sort of a call to action to the audience to make sure that we're still planning our next protest or our next 2 protests and dialing our representatives and meeting with staff and everything else.
Right. Yeah, I had
I interrupted you, Matt. What were you about to say?
The last episode of my show, which you can go to listen to at youtube.com/MattBinder, I had on a guest from American Muslims for Palestine, and we talked literally just a few hours after that ceasefire was announced last week. And the first thing we talked about, and my guest stressed is that, listen, just because there's a ceasefire doesn't mean everything else changes. Like the massive bombings and knocking down of buildings in Gaza, which basically, captivated the news media and everyone watching it over the past few weeks. Maybe those will subside for a bit due to the ceasefire, but everything else that Israel regularly does to the people of Palestine will continue. And that, I'm happy you called in to, to remind everyone that too, because, people are still, I think it was literally just a few days ago, I saw a video of IDF inside one of the mosques, again, harassing people who were just there to, to pray.
Yeah. And I mean, I think at least right now in the country, sorry.
At least you go.
At least right now in, I think, U.S. discourse, to be honest, I think because there were a rise in anti-Semitic incidents, basically people who were already hateful, who I think glommed on to the fight for Palestinian liberation and human rights as a way to, already express that they had hate in their heart. And I guess I haven't talked about those as much because I think a lot of that has been used to delegitimize the Palestinian liberation movement, and at least in the discourse right now. And I think a lot of that has kind of, in the United States, sapped some of the conversation of its momentum right now. But it's also what you're saying is that now that there's been this ceasefire, okay, the war-like violence isn't happening maybe at the level as it was, but the cultural genocide and the evictions, but not evictions because there's no legal basis, the forced taking of Palestinian homes, that's still continuing. So you're right that, that's where the focus should be.
Oh, yeah. First, to Matt, that was Ms. Muhammad Hedbeh.
Yes.
He's a great interview guest. I saw the interview. Viewers,
thank you.
Highly recommend the Doomed podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Just saying. No problem.
I appreciate the call, Nathan. I really appreciate it. If you have anything else, just really quick, because we got to jump.
Yeah, super briefly. So long as we continue to let the suffering of the people on the ground speak, and people like Mohammed Al-Kurd just come on and describe their own personal experiences, it's unimpeachable, to Emma's point. You don't need to get into weirdness about, oh, the Jews did this, that some people might want to try to swindle into these conversations. Just focusing on who's getting hurt always centers the right person and avoids that nonsense. I'll let you go on with the program.
All right, thanks a lot, Nathan.
Thanks,
Good
Nathan.
call.
I love the name Nathan too, by the way.
It's a good name. It makes
such a nice name. Yes.
Makes me think of hot dogs.
Me too, actually. I thought someone was going to go with Nathan Fielder, but it makes me think of hot dogs, actually.
Well, I mean, come on. Like, Nathan for you, like, that man is just a legend. And
I will say, Nathan the caller, not Nathan the business management advisor. Canadian business management advisor makes a good point. I think we've been desensitized to the everyday brutality that Palestinian people, and I guess not only just Palestinian people, but many occupied people around the world at home and abroad experience. And we're only able to identify it through these more extreme cases of when that brutality that's been bubbling for, decades finally gets to the point where it's unignorable by the rest of the world, by the rest of the population. We see that at home too, when the police shootings go viral, after a while, whether the punishment is doled out or not, people's attention span goes away, even as the continued, violence against the Black community, against the brown community, against indigenous communities by the police departments continued unabated every day, right? It's just a cycle and a system of outrage and forgetfulness that we've been programmed into, I think, by the media, where we're only able to identify these extreme cases of prejudice as all of prejudice versus the systemic everyday lives lived by these people under occupation and apartheid.
Right. Emma, well, go ahead.
No, if you guys want to get into clips, I got a few that I find to be hilarious and or interesting. But Matt, if you have something in mind, go ahead.
No, why don't you take your clip, and then I'll take a clip, and then we can just go down the line here, you know?
Okay. Yeah. This 14 is what I'm gonna choose to lead with here. So, it appears that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez may have a formidable challenger in an upcoming election here. The one problem is that this guy's running in Arizona, but that's not going to stop him from taking on socialist communist AOC.
Don't you hate when living across the country stops you from doing something like that?
Yeah,
Really?
it's a real shame for his ends.
Socialists like AOC hate two things, God and America. I'm Alex Stovall, a 26-year-old Army officer chaplain running to stop AOC and her cronies from taking over our Congress and our country. I don't fight for this country to watch it get taken over by AOC, and I need your help to flip this seat and stop her corruption of our Congress. To stop AOC and her cronies, we gotta fight fire with fire. That's why I'm running to become the youngest black Republican congressman in U.S. history. I will be the perfect voice to cut through their BS. Can you contribute $26 right now? We need your contributions to help me get the word out about my campaign to restore faith, family, and freedom to our country. Together, we will take back Congress for the people in 2022 and save our country. Thank you, and God bless America.
Alex.
I like all the quantifiers he had to use to show that he would make history. I would be the youngest ever black Republican in Congress.
Yeah.
I think this is a good scam. I think this is, if nothing else, a good way to make money. You know, like running on an anti-AOC platform in the Republican Party just has to be like an incredibly effective way to raise money for any campaign, you know, irrespective of, you know, AOC's efficacy or lack thereof or whatever you feel about her. Like, they come out in the woodwork. She lives rent free in every Republican's mind, either for financial or just like ideological reasons.
Oh, and it's not just financial or ideological. There's also weird, like, pseudo sexual, violent, like bizarre, obsessive undercurrents to a lot of the obsession with her. I mean, I will maintain that forever because I think it's integral to understanding their obsession with her. But you're right. And
debate me or date me, AOC. Pick one.
That's really essentially what it is. And like it actually is a good strategy. I mean, it's hilariously stupid, right? Because I'm sure, you know, some Fox News old people are going to see that and be like, hey, he's a black guy. I'm not racist and he doesn't like AOC like me. And he said the name AOC 40 times in a 45-second ad or whatever, how long that was. So yeah, I'm going to shell out some money for him. That's essentially, you know, the strategy here. It's not a bad one, but it's incredibly amusing to feature a congresswoman from New York that many times. I mean, who even represents that district? Who would this guy even run against? Doesn't matter. We're going to take out AOC for some reason.
Did you notice that photo of a bunch of Democrats and then they all go out of focus except for AOC, who like gets brighter and more It's like Nancy Pelosi is literally in that photo with AOC, and this guy's going like, ignore those other people. They don't like. Are you kidding me?
Can you pull that up, Brendan? Can you or Matt? Can you guys just? It's it's maybe like 10 seconds into the ad. They cut her out.
I actually think that shows his age because I really do think. Keep going. Yeah, keep going. Right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really do think Nancy Pelosi hate is the bigger fundraiser still on the right than AOC hate. Yet this guy, he's like a young guy, so he probably doesn't. What does he even know about Nancy Pelosi? He knows AOC. All his friends talking about AOC.
Well, he made AOC like the B. I mean, he made Pelosi like the B villain in it. They showed her tearing up the paper, but.
Right, no, I mean, well. I think AOC like is more than in the Democratic Party a good way to raise money for like your candidate, and you know, maybe if you're an Arizona Democrat running for office, like as an Arizona Republican, I think AOC is a symptom of their desire to get into that sort of cool kid Instagram, TikTok, you know, political media establishment that just eludes Republicans because they're weird. and punch down. So like AOC being like an effective, having millions of followers on Twitter and being an effective social media operative, they've been trying to recreate that magic for since she's come into the field. How many articles have they had where it's like, meet the 4 young Republican suburban moms who are the
Freedom
new
Squad
the
or
new
whatever.
squad taking on AOC. And it's like, then like a month later, it's a whole new 4 of them. And you're like, okay, well, we get it. But they have an obsession with not being cool. I think they think AOC is cooler than like she actually is, and so like that level of coolness is something they aspire to, both for financial and just like really weird, social reasons.
Just look at
that is funny how cool they think AOC is. Like because AOC is kind of a nerd a little bit, and they think.
Matt, I was curious why,
Green, like dying to get AOC to like debate her so she could get a hot minute on like AOC's Twitch or YouTube or wherever they'd have this online debate. So she
They're clout sharks. They're clout sharks.
Right.
Matt, why? I thought about this a little bit. It sounded like you were kind of jonesing for some more Nancy Pelosi in that ad.
Right. There's not enough Nancy Pelosi. There's never enough Nancy. That's what all I have to say.
Right.
Okay, you're an old head, Matt. You like the old fashioned narrative about Nancy Pelosi running the party and ruining the scenes. This new.
He just wanted to see more of her.
Right.
I mean, we know he's in love with her.
Yeah,
so
I'm in love with Nancy Pelosi. That's true. Yeah. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you know this, Brendan, but long ago, when Nancy Pelosi got in trouble for going to that hairstylist or whatever during the pandemic, I dared to call out the right-wing smear hit on her. And everyone took that as my beloved defense of her. And from that day forward on this show, I've been known as the Nancy Pelosi simp.
I would think that it's just like, because you have really nice hair, Matt, very full, very voluminous, that you would just be defending the right to people to skirt public health laws just to get their hair done.
Right. But I'm also
irrespective
of
political ideology.
I'm also very DIY though. So in all honesty, if we're going by that, Nancy Pelosi could have cut her own hair at home.
That's what you want us to believe. That's what you want us to. You want us to think this is like a nonchalant kind of roll out of bed and this is what it looks like situation.
It's big hair. This is big hair.
Yeah.
We've all seen the shrine I have. I know it leaked online. The Pelosi shrine that I have in my closet. Yep.
All right, Alex Stovall for Arizona's 7th in Maricopa County. Okay, so it's Ruben Gallego's seat, I guess. But, he doesn't stand a chance against a 26-year-old chaplain. Oh, Black Republican chaplain. I'm sorry. He made that clear.
Gallego is a veteran himself, like a combat veteran, too, I think.
Oh, veteran, right.
Yeah, Army chaplain is insane. Like, that's
so fucking funny. I'm sorry.
That's a crazy thing,
but it's a perfect, Republican thing.
It's a complete, contradictory role. But, yeah, that's kind of makes sense given the fact that he's a Black Republican.
To me, he
loves to live in contradictions.
To me, it's the perfect thing to do if you're planning on one day running for office as a Republican. Do you just check all those boxes off? You know what I mean? Who wouldn't love an Army veteran who is a religious figure? I mean, come on. If you're a Republican, that's like, ooh, you're looking at that. I also want to give the shout out to the guy for that great delivery of "There's 2 things Democrats hate: God and America." That was great in the beginning of the ad. I think
that's AOC hates.
Oh, right. What did I say?
Democrats in general. No,
she's taking over the party, Matt. So eventually, one day, all Democrats are going to hate God in America.
That was the actual very nice stylistic touch in that video, is that it transitions like a blur transition from Pelosi wearing the white suit, tearing up Trump's speech, to AOC also in a white suit.
It's art. It's art.
Right. You want to go to this next clip here? I like this one. I guess you got this from earlier this week, but we didn't hit. It seems like you guys didn't hit it. So Dan Bongino's radio program is up and running. It's off, and people I'm sure love it based on how well this guy does on Facebook, where the conservative voices are held down and censored and deplatformed all the way to the number 1 through 10 Facebook posts every single day. But Bongino's got this radio show now, and he spoke to Donald Trump, former president Donald Trump, big get for Bongino. And they had to talk, obviously, about conspiracy theories, of course. Conspiracy theories really big in the Republican Party right now. Recent study that just came out today, I was reading, almost a full quarter of Republicans believe in the main QAnon tenet that, the country and the world is being run by a bunch of global cannibal pedophiles. That's always good. But here's what they had to say about another
cannibal things
theory.
where you lose me, but anyway.
Right. On Bongino's show.
Just want to squeeze in a couple more questions if I could. Just quickly, is there something the government's not telling us about this UFO thing? I'm a little concerned here. I mean, you were the president.
Well,
Barack Obama's speaking out now.
Let's just keep going along the path. I'm sort of a believer in what you see. But there are a lot of people out there. They're into that. I get that so much. Yeah. Is it true, sir? Is it true?
Right.
I guess I'm sort of.
I know. I have asked you.
Maybe not such a believer, but some people are.
Awesome.
So I don't want to hurt their dreams or their fears. It could be fears more.
Don't want to hurt their fears.
All right. Good enough. On to more important.
I don't want to hurt your fears.
First of all, I think the real under the line here that's being that should be covered more is I'm a believer in what you see. This is a guy who's been spreading insane ass conspiracy theories for the past like 5-6 years, from claiming that Barack Obama wasn't actually born in Hawaii to the most recent one, obviously, with the big lie where he claims that the election of 2020 was stolen from him. None of these things are things he's seen because they're not true, but didn't stop him from spreading those conspiracy theories. But I do love that aliens, the one conspiracy theory that is, quite honestly, in my opinion, we could debate whether they've come here or what these aliens look like, how much they're like people or just like whatever, like, bacteria or whatever. Aliens clearly have to exist somewhere. No way we're the only living creature in the universe with all the galaxies and whatever. But that's the one this guy's like, I don't want to let everybody down on how stupid their belief is. I mean, it's just stunning to see him talk about it like this and also say what he said about how he's a believer in what you see. Stunning. There we go. Yeah.
He's absolutely right.
I would believe that there is a large overlap between his followers, like his voters, like his core base, the QAnon believers, and people who believe in aliens. Because, as somebody who doesn't believe, well, I'll leave my own beliefs out of it. As somebody who consumes a lot of conspiracy media, not about aliens, I was going to go back into flat earth. So, but as someone who consumes a lot of conspiracy media, I found that the overlap between people in QAnon and though in flat earth is quite high, because I find that both are just like people who get caught up in believing every conspiracy. It's just like the QAnon just happens to be much more Facebook, boomer meme conspiratorial thinking, percolating over years with like Fox News and Rush Limbaugh. But, there is a lot of overlap with that in the UFO and flat earth believing community, because some people just like believing in conspiracies. Some people just believe, and they believe in everything. And by the time you get towards like a flat earth theory or, a QAnon, a big portion of that is just having a new conspiracy to believe in, having a new conspiracy to delve into, having some more lore to get into. I'm the same way when a new Dark Souls comes out. But, I think that you find that there is, which I guess implies that there are going to be people who, in my opinion, leave QAnon, once the hot new conspiracy comes out. But that doesn't, necessarily speak to the fact that, we've been giving special credence to right-wing conspiracies in mainstream media in a way that we don't give credence to, even UFO conspiracies in mainstream media, which gives QAnon much more sticking power and allows it to resonate with a lot more people and across populations and across groups, whether they be conspiratorial in nature or just like generally disaffected.
Right. Well, the big difference there, though, really quick, is that QAnon is inherently a political conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can be a flat earther, although that's a little bit it's mostly taken up by right wingers, the flat earth thing. But you could believe in aliens. That's a conspiracy theory that's crosses all political ideological spectrums. There's nothing political about aliens, but QAnon. I mean, find me someone who believes in QAnon who hates Donald Trump. I mean, the literal basis of it is that Donald Trump is the only person who's fighting the good fight against this cabal. Like, you literally can't. Other people who maybe don't realize that aspects of QAnon, like the child trafficking thing, is being pushed by, you know, Trump supporters. Yes, we've seen that, where people don't understand the full, you know, all the tentacles QAnon is in, and they believe a part of QAnon without realizing it's just part of a bigger picture. But altogether, you can't be a QAnon believer and be like an anti-Trump guy. It's just not possible.
No, I actually agree. Just jumping real quick, and that's the part I never got into QAnon on a personal, like, aesthetic, like, interest reason, because it's way too rooted in like America and America's like history and the nation state, like kind of how national treasure is rooted in that, you know, where the Da Vinci Code is more about Renaissance and like general European history and like cryptography. You know, there's no QAnon without an inherent belief in the value of America. And that's just really boring and weird for, you know, most conspiracy theories to be so focused on that kind of thing. But sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No, it's crossed over though. That's the crazy thing. Like, QAnon is big in other countries. Like, you know, Japan, for example, has a huge QAnon community, and their belief is in the exact thing you just like broke down. It's still like, it's not like the QAnon in Japan has a Japanese flavor where like they believe like the prime minister is in the place of Trump in their version. No, their version also believes Trump is the leader of the good fight against this global cabal. It's bonkers. But go ahead, Emma. You were trying to say something before.
No, it's just back to what Trump was saying. Like, I mean, there's two things, right? So, I mean, one, I feel like Trump's so stupid and impulsive that if he had seen some sort of smoking gun at like Area 51 or actually more definitive evidence of UFOs, he'd probably have blurted it out already. So to me, that's like, all right, you know, I believe that there are other beings and aliens. Like, it would be incredibly narcissistic, I think, not to think that there's life on other planets, given the scope of the universe. But I doubt the United States government, just based on Trump's his constitution. I mean, he would blurt something out. But right. Two, this is the exact same thing that he did with the vaccine, where he took it in secret and he didn't tell anybody about it because he wanted to continue to appeal to a certain base, which is what you guys are mentioning. This really conspiratorial element, like, of the Republican base, that one overlaps with anti-vaxxers and might have a bunch of conspiracies about UFOs, which is why he goes, I don't want to dispel, or I don't want to get rid of anybody's fears or their hopes or dreams, because yeah, I mean, that's the same calculations he's making.
Well, no, I think it's
you don't think though that everyone knowing how he is, they just wouldn't show him any information regarding UFOs?
I don't think he would want to see it, man. I think he's afraid of UFOs.
Yeah, I think maybe that's a good point, Brendan. I think maybe what he was saying to Bongino was full-blown projection. I mean, maybe he was saying, like, you know, I don't want to break it to you guys, so, you know, get rid of your dreams or your fears. Maybe he was saying, I didn't look into it because I didn't want to know, because I don't want to get scared about whether they actually exist or not. I mean, this is a guy who it's not like he would be curious about it and look into it. This is honestly, like, that type of thing, it seems something that like he'd have complete disinterest in, honestly.
I would believe that, like, there are things that are classified above the level of the president. You know, just by nature of how the president is a fixed term limit, where there are some appointments that are basically lifetime, I would believe that they would not tell, you know, just every average Tom, Dick, and Harry who walks into the White House, because, you know, the Democrats and Republicans are distinct entities sometimes from the military industrial complex and the sort of the deep state and the, you know, ABC agency. So I would 100% believe that they just want to tell them something. They don't even know how many military bases we have, much less any of that other stuff. My only point was going to be more that I could see how it would be easier for people who inherently are subject to right-wing media and within the boundaries of what we consider to be acceptable right-wing media, which I guess we have to include Fox News, broadly speaking, would be incredibly susceptible to just general conspiracy propaganda, because part of that ideology is just inherent victimhood, like that there is this mysterious cabal of people out there who are trying to change society in the way that is somehow distinct from what you're seeing on the news in the sense of like Congress and, you know, whatever. And it's actually some combination of like Black people, Jewish people, women whose liberation is all tied to your subjection. And, you know, once you start at that point, which is just clearly not tethered in reality, you can end up in a lot of places. Right, you can end up at the flat Earth. You can end up at, you know, QAnon. You can end up any number of places because your particular comfort and your particular positionality within your own world is privileged. That's like a subjective fact where everyone else is treated as like, you know, they're operating into some sort of secret cabal world where they're either lying or, you know, manipulating you.
Yeah, that's well said.
Right. And also on to your point about them not telling the president about aliens or Area 51 or whatever. I mean, that was the movie Independence Day's take on it. So it's not completely out of realm.
What kind of aliens do you believe in?
They kept stuff from Trump. It was known that like people around him really had to manage him. So I wouldn't be shocked if Trump has no idea how the government works. They just kept certain things from him. Maybe.
Yeah, I think there are definitely a lot of things that like won't be elaborated to a president unless they ask about them. I don't think I would infer from that aliens have visited the Earth and that the government has evidence of it and is sitting on it. Because I don't think that's true. I think there's probably aliens out there in the universe, like to Binder's
that's
point.
That's my position too. Yeah.
That they visited here, I think, is a big stretch. And I think Trump's dismissive attitude is probably because he has got to the point where he knows that a lot of this is different countries' military industrial complexes doing like sort of demonstrations for the other countries. But
yes, those things are probably some version of US drones or like, you know, experimental projects that like, okay, Trump's just doesn't care, not gonna comment on that.
Well, yeah.
Also, why would aliens come here first? Like, you know, we you know, under like believing that there's some higher being than us, like, and we already communicate over the airwaves and not in person all the time. Why wouldn't they communicate in that way first instead of traveling who knows how long to get here? You know, it just doesn't make sense, I guess, but also who knows?
I was going to say the conspiracy theory community is split on the existence of aliens too, right? Or at least the definition of what aliens actually mean, you know, because there's, you know, unidentified flying objects, which most people agree could be anything from drone satellites from other countries or United States to, you know, swamp gas. But, you know, there are other conspiracy communities that exist around different ideas about what aliens are, right? So you can't even specifically speak to any one type of alien people are out there asking about, right? So I mean, it's an interesting question, but I think it's way too nuanced for Trump to even like begin to answer or begin to explain to someone like Trump. Because like, what does it mean to be like an alien? Some people believe that the Earth is like 15 times larger than, you know, we're told, and that aliens are just people who live on other parts of it. So like, there's like a whole bunch of different alien ideas out there. So I'd be interested to know what kind of briefing he got on aliens. Maybe that's a better question. Like, hey, did they ever give you any kind of briefing on this kind of thing? Like, what did they tell you it was, you know, versus, you know, are aliens real?
No, he was super adamant about the Space Force. I mean, there's got to be a reason for that.
I mean, yeah.
What was that all about?
If there's no danger out there, why do we need military in space?
Contracts, right. Large contracts, basically.
Right.
With aliens, Matt.
Yeah.
Well, you can maybe do some contracts with them.
You guys want to go back to the phones? Let's take 917. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Pepper on Governor's Island.
Hey, Pepper on Governor's Island. What would you like to talk about today?
I wanted to talk about a local debate that took place over the weekend, and then a question that kind of arose from that I think could be applicable outside of the Brooklyn locality.
Sure, let's do it.
So in the 35th district, there's a city council seat where the former city council member has been term limited. And there's been a lot of, her name is Laura Cumbo. There's been a lot of criticism of her, particularly over the Bedford Avenue Armory, and then how it's being used not for the community, but for outside interests, higher money interests. And the community wants somebody that's more focused on the 35th district, what's going on there. So there are 7 candidates running. 6 of them don't have previous government experience. 1 does. And it's been interesting to watch the 6 try to peg the 1 as the establishment, when her government experience totals 3 years, approximately half of which she was working for the former city council member. And then she left that office because she didn't necessarily align with everything that was going there, and started working for the public advocate. So this question has arisen in this particular debate, but it's on a larger question of having experience versus not having experience, what having experience means in terms of holding elected office, the difference between a career politician and someone who has studied local politics through participation and is now making their own run.
Right. Well, I'm actually fairly familiar with Cumbo. Like, I mean, not like super familiar, but I've come across her name numerous times. She, from my understanding, is a very progressive or anti-leftist political figure. She has been claiming that the DSA members who run are gentrifiers, regardless of who they are and what their background is. She's even called young Black people who've been running for office in Brooklyn gentrifiers, if I recall, if they're running on a DSA platform or one like it. So I mean, if you worked for her for 3 years and she's, like you just explained, the type of who she is in terms of what she's done, and just, you know, that one example. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know how I think the establishment sort of label that goes with working for someone like that for 3 years seems fine. I mean, it's not like you worked for someone and they got into office and changed and you hightailed it out of there. 3 years is a long time.
I think, well, she only worked for her for 1.5 years and left after that because she didn't agree with what was going on. The point being that the way that she's approaching this election cycle, I hear her like being transparent about what she learned from that position, and she wants to do things remarkably different, and how she separates herself from those anti-progressive points of view of Lori, and that how else do you well, particularly right now, how else do you hit the ground running besides with some experience in office, and having, I mean, she started mutual aid programs. This is the one candidate. She started mutual aid programs in the neighborhood, is highly active, getting the senior community vaccinated right now.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously, I mean, obviously, they're going to hit her for whatever they can, obviously, and that would be in a broader sense. Right. In any campaign, you use your opponent's full background and grab what you think will resonate with people in terms of turning them onto you or turning them against the people you're running against. So I mean, is it fair? Yeah. I don't know, but it's all good in the. I don't think it's too personal or out of bounds or dirty or just, I mean, it's legit, I think, to whether it's accurate as to who she is now is another question, but I do think it's a completely legit thing to pose to the voters. I mean, why this person.
Yeah, the bottom line is, like, she can say she learned, but ultimately it's going to be other work that she can point to that is in a good direction, that is going to take people's mind out, because people just don't want to hear you say, I was doing something bad and then I learned from it. They want to hear what you did that was good.
Also, it depends who
and the mutual aid thing's great too.
Yeah, right. It also depends who you're running against too. Like if you're the most progressive in the race and you have these sort of questionable things in your background, you know, if you're still the most progressive in the race, then, you know, I think people will willing to let, you know, those bygones be bygones. But if you're not, and there's a better candidate out there, then I mean, you know, what could you do about it? Those things are going to be held against you, and you know, maybe rightfully so, maybe not, but it is what it is.
And, you know, just to jump in to address the caller's like sort of more general question, I think that's a good question, and it kind of like precludes the answer he's given, which is that, you know, within our society, how do we determine, you know, what counts as relevant expertise for not just political office, but for any kind of job? Like, you know, how do we decide what it means to be qualified to be a politician, to, you know, to be on the school board, to be president, to be, you know, congressman, you know, for any job basically? And the answer is, like, largely speaking, we have sort of cordoned off certain life paths that would otherwise lead people to have a more progressive worldview, and slowly eroded what it means to be have relevant experience for these kinds of jobs, which goes to the caller's other point, which is, you know, how do you get off the ground running? Well, I think, you know, which is a good question, but I think it kind of leads to this fallacy where, you know, the only way to get off the ground running in politics is to put yourself into position to be working and enmeshed in these worlds that are going to try to indoctrinate you into a belief that you may or may not be open to, but, you know, they're going to do so very subtly. All your friends, all your coworkers, everyone you talk to are going to be generally good people who have this ideology that holds itself to be, you know, centrism or liberalism or just being a Democrat. And that's what you're going to be dealing with every day. And do you have the ability to have enough sort of, you know, I don't know, self-esteem, individuality to keep yourselves and sort of immune to the charms of that, right? And my answer would be most people don't. Most people overestimate themselves and think that they do. And so the larger answer has to be, well, we have to expand or work on expanding what it means to have this legitimate, what it means to have legitimate expertise for some of these media and political fields. You know, we can't just try to keep shuttling people through Harvard and Yale and all of these sort of very, very heavily curated life paths that give us people like Obama, that give us people like any number of pundits who are willing to toe the company line. You know, it's great if we can get people through that system, but ultimately we have to start working on like getting away from that even being the sole mechanism by which we legitimize ourselves, because it's, you know, it's weighted against us. You know, if you have to work for somebody like Cumbo in order to run for office, then, you know, the chances are that you're not going to get someone like the candidate we're talking about, assuming they are, you know, suitably leftist, they're doing mutual aid. You're more often going to get people who are like Cumbo.
Right. Right. No, it's a great point. And, you know, going off of that too, I mean, if you're running on your experience, then I mean, you're asking for it because that's your experience. I mean, it's not like you said she's running on being an experience. And this is, again, on that broader question. If you are someone who's running on you being experienced in the field, whatever it is that you're running for or trying to get hired for or whatever you want to do, well, what is it that you're experienced with? Just because you worked in there doesn't mean what you did was good. And so if that's your experience and you are running on that, I mean, of course, it's everyone who doesn't want you to win that position or whatever has every right to tear that to shreds. If you shouldn't be running on that experience, then.
Right. And to the larger question, which is really what I want to take back into the conversations that surround this particular local race, is talking about career politicians and having experience versus what experience is, and I guess ultimately like what really matters right now. And I think I feel like I don't know, as somebody who isn't participating in politics a lot, but I'm watching this race and I feel would normally align with the people who would not be the establishment, but I feel like in this case this person is very appealing. I guess I'm struggling to both work out the viewpoint of the further left in criticizing her, but at the same time the immediate appeal of this person feeling like a well-rounded candidate who's taking a lot of political inexperience and a small amount of time in office and putting together a really intelligent platform as a result.
Right. Well, I mean, that's obviously, I don't know the individuals. That's obviously, completely your call. But I mean, when we're talking a city council race, the level of that, what would be someone's experience that's relevant to that? They wouldn't have bigger experience on a bigger platform, because then they wouldn't be running for city council. So, I mean, if you're going to run in your experience to become a city council person, it's obviously going to be something small bore. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
No,
so it is what it is there.
Just generally, assuming, again, I'm not particularly familiar with the candidate we're talking about, but again, assuming they're working in good faith, I'm sure it's very frustrating to have people who claim to be further to your left, who are further to your left, to, who operate outside the system, criticize you for trying to choose the smartest path in your own mind to accomplish what goals you feel like accomplishing. However, where I don't find myself agreeing with people who take umbrage with that is where they feel like the solution is for people outside of that system, to the left of them, to suddenly just not critique them and to assume that because they have professed that they're working in good faith, that, we can trust that. We can't. People say that all the time. There's really no way to tell the liars from the people telling the truth until they actually accomplish what they're saying in office. And so I just sort of believe that when people try to, when people work within the system, when people try to draw upon the system for legitimacy, like Matt said, they make themselves subject to the criticism of that system. You don't get to work within the Democratic Party as a Democrat and try to do progressive things. And then when people say Democrats are trash, you go well, some Democrats are actually this and that, because that's not thinking systemically. That's not thinking structurally. And that all that does is create all these loopholes in people's heads for people who, again, are not like this theoretical good candidate we're talking about, but people who are more in line with the Lauren Cumbos out there to use the language of social justice to obscure the fact that, yeah, they're not really about that life. But, if you just give them a chance. And so I think that, at a certain point, people who want to choose that path have to be aware that that is what that path comes with, and, either be willing to deal with that kind of criticism, have answers for those kinds of questions, because, that is the way our system works. People lie about being left all the time. To pretend like that doesn't happen is just not, that's not reality. That's why we have so many people alienated from our system.
Right. And I don't think, we'll move on after this, but, I don't think that, if someone is clearly acting in good faith and then trying to work within, the Democratic Party, for example, to make something happen to the best of their ability, I think, most leftists and progressives see through that and can see, I do think someone like an AOC or an Ilhan Omar really are in there fighting the good fight. You might disagree with them on a number of things, but at the end of the day, you don't think they're working against your what you want to see happen. And I think that would shine through if that's who this person is as well. Or what would shine through is the fact that they are the other way around, where they actually really are a fervent supporter of the Democratic Party as it is, and they're just trying to, like Brandon said, use the social justice or progressivism or leftism to take advantage of the current rising tide in the Democratic Party among the left. I mean, I think it shines through who they really are, even if they are in a position where they're trying to dip their foot in both pools, I guess you can say. But thanks for the call.
Well, thank you for all your thoughts. Yeah, I
also,
appreciate you so
what
much.
did you say? What did you say your name was again? Pepper from where?
Well, I'm calling from Governor's Island today. Down off the southern tip of Manhattan.
Got it. Okay, got it. All right, take care.
Yeah. All right, bye.
I thought he was from. For a second, I thought he said he was from somewhere outside of New York. So I was baffled as to why he was so into this one race. This one extremely local race. Emma, you got any clips?
Sure. Well, I'm an Elizabeth Warren shill, so I want to cover this, obviously, even though
I remember you were right. I remember that.
Right,
okay.
Right. I supported Bernie and voted for him. I just didn't think she was the devil. Won't get over that.
Well, that's your
No,
you went wrong.
I've actually been getting a lot more, because I've been watching TV with ads recently for a number of reasons. I've been getting a lot more ads for local races for the mayor's race. So I've been seeing Elizabeth Warren all the time because she's in this ad for this guy who's running for New York City comptroller. And it's like Elizabeth Warren, AOC, like every time I had a commercial, it's just like, I'm voting for, I don't want to say his name because I don't want to endorse anybody, blank for controller. I'm like, yeah, you know, you don't usually hear people say the actual word inside the ad. It's a little alienating, I think.
Right. Brad Lander, I believe.
Is that an endorsement, Emma?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I haven't looked into comptroller yet. I've been like too busy trying to stave off the Yang Gang. But so let's get into this Elizabeth Warren questioning of Jamie Dimon. The other day, Elizabeth Warren questioned JP Morgan, I think CEO, but essentially the public face of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, one of Barack Obama's BFFs in the banking industry. He was, I would say, the face of a lot of the frustrations from the left during the Obama era, in the way that Obama did not go after bankers. The legislation that was enacted in terms of financial reform was incredibly weak. And so that he's seen by some still in the Democratic Party in those circles as basically the kind of Democratic greedy banker type. But Elizabeth Warren was having none of that in a questioning of him over, I don't think that's what the hearing was about, but she went after him essentially about the obscene amounts of overdraft fees that JP Morgan Chase charged its customers in the middle of a pandemic in 2020. This was pretty expertly done. Let's take a look.
So let me start with you, Mr. Dimon. You are the star of the overdraft show. Your bank, JP Morgan, collects more than 7 times as much money in overdraft fees per account than your competitors. So, Mr. Dimon, how much did JP Morgan collect in overdraft fees from their consumers in 2020?
Well, I think your numbers are totally inaccurate, but we'll have to sit down privately and go through that.
These are public numbers.
And I also want to point out we did not overdraft.
Can you just answer my question?
We
How
did
much
not
did
overdraft
JP
the
Morgan
Fed.
collect?
We did not overdraft at the Fed account. And at any request,
so you never.
Said they needed,
I'm sorry,
they needed
Mr.
COVID
Dimon.
relief.
That was Mr. Dimon. That was not the question.
On request.
Did you had an automatic protection? So I'm asking. You were recommended, the regulators recommended you offer that same kind of protection to your customers.
And
how much, in fact, did JP Morgan collect in overdraft fees from their customers in 2020? Do you know the number?
I don't know the number in front of me, but
well, I actually have the number in front of me.
It's
$1.463 billion. That's nearly $1.5 billion that you collected from your customers. Now, do you know how much JP Morgan's profit would have been in 2020 if you had followed the recommendation of the regulators and waived overdraft fees to help struggling consumers? In other words, without that overdraft money, would your bank have been in financial trouble?
We waived the fees for customers upon request if they were under stress because of COVID.
You know, I appreciate that you want to duck this question. Do you know how much your profits would have been if you'd actually waived all the fees as the regulators recommended?
We waived the fees every time.
The answer is your profits would have been $27.6 billion. I did the math for you. So here's the thing. You and your colleagues come in today to talk about how you stepped up and took care of customers during the pandemic, and it's a bunch of baloney. In fact, it's about $4 billion worth of baloney, but you could fix that right now.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it was very well done just because that was what Dimon was coming in there to do, based on what I said earlier. He has a cozy relationship with many in the Democratic Party based on that history, which is important to understanding the context. And he wanted to essentially wage some sort of PR campaign about how JP Morgan Chase was actually quite kind to its customers. Notice that, another frustration with Warren is she's always focused on consumers. I mean, this is her niche, but it's not more just like, what does citizens deserve in this country? But that's a very minor critique overall. Mostly, it was incredibly well done because she cornered him there. Also, JP Morgan Chase executives are about to receive millions of dollars in stock buybacks. And one key thing that she mentioned was that Diamond went against the recommendations of regulators in 2020. Recommendations does not equal regulation, right? And this is not anything, it doesn't have anything to do with Warren. Obviously, in 2020, Donald Trump was president. But this is what happens when instead of actual regulation, you make recommendations. They break records in how many overdraft fees that they charge their customers as people are going through a pandemic, as there's peak joblessness, as there's people who are getting on the brink of starvation and would be evicted from their homes if there wasn't some sort of moratorium. I mean, this is exactly what happens. And so there was a lot there, but I'll let you guys jump in.
It's also just sick that he basically offers up, we waived it for anyone who asked for it. And they still collected nearly $1.5 billion. It's just like, I don't know. It's just so, I get so fucking frustrated with it. I still want, that sort of, recognition as, a good banker.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, that's how they get you, right? The opt out, right? It should be like, you have to opt in for the, the idea that you would have to spend the time to call up and ask for it, even know that you can do that. There are people who wouldn't even think to do that, but that's why they do it, and, Warren is in her element here. And, even if someone is upset with Warren for other reasons, you need to be able to separate, that Warren with the Warren we see when she's doing something like this, which is, she's on point. This is her specialty. Like you said before, Emma, she knows how to take it to these guys and sort of unmask them for, their spin here. Like how he tries to say, I don't think those numbers are accurate. I'll have to get back to you. Well, I mean, the numbers. Come on, buddy. The numbers. Damn well they are. Because if they weren't, you would have that ready to go to dispel right then and there.
And just the arrogance to respond like that to a Senate questioning. I mean, he thinks he's above the Senate because he's rich and powerful. I mean, that was how he responded.
I think I like seeing clips like this. I also think, there's a reason a lot of what Pelosi gave to the squad was the House Oversight Committee stuff, which is this sort of public facing grilling stuff, which I think that Jamie Dimon, he is above it, frankly. Who cares? Who cares? You want to make me look dumb for 2 minutes on C-SPAN? I have billions at my disposal.
Well, yeah, so I mean, that's my point. And also, as somebody who has tried to get a refund from anywhere in the past year, let me tell you, I strongly doubt that anytime anyone called in for a refund for their overdraft fee that they were able to get it easily. That just strikes me as not true. Watching Warren grill people, same with Katie Porter, same with any time you see sort of this kind of hardcore grilling of tech industry people like Zuckerberg or Bezos or Jamie Dimon. It's cathartic in some ways, and it just really makes me wish that we had laws and people to enforce them. It might sound crazy, but it's agnostic of Elizabeth Warren. It's clear that she can lay out, maybe not in this clip because they're recommendations, not regulations, but in various clips, it's clear that she can lay out how these things are not only amoral, but also, pretty illegal and pretty shady, and how if we only had a functional government, maybe we'd be doing something about this. But I do fear that sometimes, like Matt says, people get into this kind of realm of this kind of dragging them publicly is a stand-in for punishment when it really is not that.
Yeah, it's medieval times.
I think there is a kind of person who this appeals to because it seems cathartic, and also they wouldn't want to be embarrassed by being yelled at in public, and because they think it would be really, really shameful. But as somebody who has billions of dollars and is never going to see any real punishment, if you gave me a job, you could yell at me all day.
I mean, there's value in it. I think there is value in terms
I think there's value, definitely.
Yeah, but not the value that probably the emotional response to the catharsis and the catharsis it equates or earns, I guess. I
For-
mean,
I don't think it has no value, but I would say this: it doesn't have as much value now, but where they're underplaying it is how much value it's going to have in the future. Because the people who are watching this stuff and it's resonating with are mostly younger people, and by younger I don't mean just like kids and teens. I mean people who are like under the age of 50, and this stuff is resonating with them. Millennials, Gen Z. And they see, AOC and these type of people being the flag bearers for these ideas. And that's why you're seeing a younger generation get more and more left. I mean, and they're not growing out of it either, like the old trope is. That's I think it's the value is what it will do for the future, I think.
No, I agree. I mean, I think millennials aren't growing out of it because we're not growing into jobs that pay anything, right? Like our parents, if we happen to belong to a certain subsect of society, we're promised. I think the value in it is, like Matt says, the future. If what people are getting from these, hearings are like, wow, if we had a country where like laws were real and they were enforceable, like this would be like their crime trial. This would be what they hear before like we dissolved or nationalized their company, not what they heard before they go home to face no real consequences except a fine that they have already allocated for in their, yearly budget, right? I think that the wrong lesson is what you can take from it if you are, taught to censor these kinds of rhetorical and symbolic acts of accountability as the same thing as real material like formal sanctions. It's like, well, yeah, I bet he had a really hard day in front of the public. It's like, well, who cares? Like, he doesn't respect you. He doesn't respect the opinion of the people watching C-SPAN to see Elizabeth Warren or like the New York Times. It really doesn't matter to those kinds of people. So I mean, ultimately I think that there is this impulse, just generally speaking, to substitute informal sanctions and sort of like informal censorship or informal censures rather for formal punishment and the material consequences that like this can kind of fit into, as opposed to like being a real example of how we don't have, any real consequences for people.
Right. Although I do love the imagery I just put in my own head of like Jamie Dimon logging into Twitter and checking his like mentions, and he's like, they're tweeting the clap hands emoji at me in reference to that clip. It's like, yeah, he doesn't care about the reactions.
Yeah,
like, he doesn't care about like the Raw story headline where it's like Jamie Dimon owned by Elizabeth Warren's brilliance or something like that. Like, he doesn't care.
I mean, honestly, like if a Republican owned me, I wouldn't care, right? Like, and I don't have billions of dollars. Like, Jamie Dimon's checking in on much different metrics than social media.
I have
how the public's doing.
I have self-esteem and confidence, and I think a lot of people are robbed of that in our society, and so like they accept criticism from people who like otherwise can't really affect them in any real way. And so like, if you have billions of dollars and you can just fly off to like your mansion in San Marino right after this, I have a hard time believing this is going to stick in your head. But everyday average people have like real problems in real lives sometimes, and like this kind of thing would be embarrassing if it happened at their job, but this is not really that kind of situation.
Right. I mean, sometimes, you got to take criticism from certain people as a badge of honor. Like, I'm sure Jamie Dimon goes home and says, fuck yeah, I pissed off Elizabeth Warren. Like, some criticism from the people who you view as like the right person to not like you. That's like, that's the best thing you could ask for.
Let me just say real quick. I remember a decade ago when I first heard about Elizabeth Warren from some friends who were going into finance, and they were doing internships at banks, and they were talking about how much bankers hated Elizabeth Warren at that time, and that made me think she was good.
Yeah, it's a small price to pay for increasing your bank's profits by close to 5-10% to get grilled by a senator for 5 minutes.
I'll take a dressing down from literally anyone if you want to give me a couple mil. Hell, not even a mil. Just give me a couple $100,000. I'll take it. Live on air, just completely own me, a roast, if you will.
Especially if I can just go like, I don't recall it. That sounds wrong. I don't know about that. Well, I got to look into that.
Right. Let's go to some IMs. The other Biden says, losing sports better, Clay Travis along with Buck Sexton are going to take over Rush Limbaugh's radio show. I saw that. I thought Bongino was going to take that spot, though. Did I mishear that news? I thought Bongino was the shoe-in to get that.
I think he was the presumed heir. I think machinations behind the throne.
Clay Travis and
Suck Bexton and whatever the guys. Trey.
Well, I mean, after the alien controversy,
right?
I mean, is it? They're taking over Rush's show, but are they they're taking over his time slot too.
Yeah, no, that's the slot they're taking. That's what it means. Yeah, because there's no it's not going to be like the Rush Limbaugh show with Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. What?
I guess the Bongino tryout didn't go well.
Right. I wonder. Who? Great. They didn't give him really enough time, but who knows? Clown Shoes Mike. Any thoughts on Eve Fartlow trending on Twitter? Are you guys privy to the background of this one?
I am. I agree with the people who said that that it is bait, but I also think that her comparing social media criticism of her defense of Israel to social media waterboarding was pretty.
Was she the one that said that her Jewish friend saw free parking and thought that it said free Palestine?
Yes, I've heard that was her as well.
Yeah, so yes, please keep calling her Eve Fartlow.
I think honestly that the right wing sort of pseudo intellectual, pseudo denying right wing, the kind of I got thrown out of the left right wing, has normalized this idea you can get super rich over embarrassing yourself online this way. And I just think that we've hit the point where diminishing returns. You used to be able to raise $250,000, pretend you got a yogurt cup thrown on you at a protest rally. Now, I think that people are really talking about ruining their whole lives for a long time just to make, a quick buck online and the trend for an hour. So I haven't been, the first I heard about the Eve Fartlow things, I haven't been online very recently, was her own article saying it. And that's not what you want. You don't want the first time someone really hears about it to be your own article about it. And for the article to also be funny. That's just brand management 101. But I think that there's a certain level of right winger that has been taught that hey, you know what, the cringier you are online, the more people you can get to defend you. But at this point, there's only so much defending to go around. Now only people are defending her are the worst people, the worst people in the world, a bunch of racists and a bunch of other people who are just not who you want to defend you online, essentially.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they saw, Michael Tracy get that 6-figure Substack deal, and all he had to do was get his body broken in half by Maxine Waters. And
I'm glad people. I don't keep up with newsletters, but honestly, I think that people coordinating themselves off to personal newsletters and personal blogs is actually the right move, as opposed to having these kinds of solipsistic, egomaniacal things exist as op-ed columns near other types of journalism.
Yeah.
They still do, but the worst examples of it are slowly migrating over.
You're not exposing a larger audience to it yet. It's still solipsistic and egotistical, but
right.
I wish we could get Kevin Drum of Mother Jones on the Substack.
Like a live journal. Going over to live journal is basically the best move. Because then you can just you can silo yourself, and all of your haters and fans can exist in this one ecosystem and tear yourself apart. So
right. That's a good point. Let's go back to the IMs here. Mark Monkey says, with most conspiracies, I just don't see the advantage of hiding aliens from the public. Knowing the US, we would be telling everyone about them, have bombed them and stole their tech while giving it to private industry like Musk to make money off of. Well, who knows? What's to say SpaceX isn't using some technology that he pilfered from Area 51?
Because it doesn't work.
Well, maybe. Yeah, that's true. Wyoming Ryan says, my grandpa once told me that a person could spend 100 years shooting free throws and never make a single one. That doesn't make them experts in making free throws. Experience isn't always a good metric in all cases, right?
Makes them extremely unlucky though to go 100 years.
You would definitely make 3 throws if you shot that many. They're not that hard. Anyone.
Guys, the point. All right, this is like George Bush needing a job, and he puts good at managing hurricane recovery on his resume or something.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
mean,
but I think that's a general thing that we do. We abstract people's time in these positions from like what actually happened. And so even with the Hillary Clinton, that was like the best example of it. Like she was the most experienced candidate. And then if you actually talked about all the things that happened while she was in these positions, people got incredibly cagey about that. Because ultimately speaking, you know, I think we're talking about political media world, a sort of, you know, even just like a professional class of people who are taught that, you know, just being in this space means you can never be removed from this space as a result of incompetence or any sort of mismanagement that happens. Like, who was the one they wanted to appoint to the Biden administration who destroyed HP? Like while she was there, was that one of the Biden administration appointees? Like, yeah, like this idea of abstracting people's like what occurred while people were at the head of these companies or while they were in the head of like FEMA or whatever is just our politics, because nothing ever gets any better. So all you can do is talk about how, you know, they were there though.
Right. Let's go back to the IMs. JJ Cool, why does the dumb left constantly focus their attack on AOC but not Warren? I can never comprehend why the group that fought to get Bernie elected catch so much crap, but those who undercut him are off the hook. Well, they're not really off the hook. It's just that they don't.
The dumb left used to be obsessed with Warren. With Warren. But now it's like, you know, not in the context of the primary, the Democratic presidential primary. So they can go after AOC, and for all of the reasons that I say, there is weird.
Right.
Yes.
Well, Warren's sort of gone from the spotlight now. Like, I mean, she's still a senator, obviously, and she's still, but like, you know, she's just the same as every other senator now, really. I mean, there used to be a time where people thought Elizabeth Warren would reach greater heights than Senate. Even Bernie Sanders thought that would be the case back in 2015. And, you know, she had her shot and it didn't work out. And now she's sort of like, you know, she's older. So it's not like she has another shot, you know, waiting in the wings. This is, you know, she had that was it.
She may run again. She may run again. I mean, I think
you think she's gonna run for president again? Biden said he's gonna run again. No one's gonna primary Biden. So I mean,
he says that, but I don't know if it's true.
Can you guys remember the last time a president didn't run for re-election? I mean, I know it's happened, I'm sure, but it's been
I can't remember a president this old.
But I mean, he's gonna. I mean, but that's the thing, though. He said he wasn't gonna run again. Before, he didn't get any younger when he decided now that he's going to actually run for re-election. I mean, I
think the truth is it's probably circumstantial. And if all goes well, and and nothing like health wise or party wise gets in his way, I think he probably will run again.
He has definitely put his like close by opponents or the people who would, you know, possibly rise to that occasion in the worst possible positions to run in 2024.
I think the Democratic Party does a good job of purposefully keeping their bench of young talent incredibly empty so that there's never any chance of like an internal coup. And I think the justification of him running in 2024 is going to be the same as it was in 2020. Like, oh, well, you know, to not run would show weakness and, you know, party, we can't like hand it over to Republicans. The chance that they're going to like try to center Kamala Harris as the 2024 candidate, I think is very low. I think that, you know, she had to drop out before California. And they've put her in charge of the border crisis where they tried to, which kind of tells me that they're trying to sink her, aspirations there too. So I think there's a lot of reasons, a lot of illegitimate reasons why they're going to make Biden run again if he is capable of it. And also, you know, the idea of a Biden presidency, this sort of empty shell that the military industrial complex or any number of special interests can like stamp their like opinion on, a revolving door of them, you know, is just too, I think, desirable to get rid of just because he's getting older, and to even if it's just replace him with a younger, you know, avatar, because that person just might have a few more ideas, right? You know, even if they're still mostly in line with the, you know, status quo.
I think it's a bad idea though to compare Harris's lack of success in the primaries to any future run. I mean, she's the vice president now. That automatically
great things in Central America. Did you hear today that she has enlisted an agreement with 12 companies to go down to Central America to help spur, you know, innovation and growth, including Microsoft, MasterCard, and Nestle?
Right. But the people who would vote in a Democratic primary wouldn't give a shit about that, to be quite honest with you.
Well, I mean, but Brendan, please use that incredibly sarcastic voice more often. That was well done.
No, I mean, I just frankly think the Democratic Party in the campaign, people who ran her campaign in the primary, the Clinton people, if I recall correctly, they're just not good at building new talent. They're not good at getting somebody's image from like zero, like, hey, no one's heard of this person. Let's inform people about them in a positive way, to like actual rising star. What was the last king they were able to make in the Democratic Party who wasn't a relic of the Clinton era or like the 90s or 80s? What has the messaging been besides like, if you don't vote for this old man, you're all going to die in some sort of like Trump related nuclear holocaust? It's like that, that's the Democratic Party's messaging. And that's not really, the kind of proactive, positive, young messaging you want to see behind, Kamala Harris. That's kind of like, we've given up, maybe they'll run Steny Hoyer or something if he's still around. But, I don't think they have the kind of like toolkit set up to actually build any new brands here, to like borrow some marketing terms.
That's good though that AOC is so young though. I mean, they could try to deny her for as long as they want, but the fact is she's going to outlive them, and then eventually there'll be nobody left to deny her. I
don't know if the thing about her running is like, she's accumulated such baggage at such a young age in terms of perception.
I don't think so. I think a lot of people really like her. I think that's
I do too, but if you're not a Democrat or a leftist, I think there's a lot of negative perception.
No, I mean, I think beyond that too, even honestly, quite honestly, like unless you are a right winger, I would say I would think positively of her.
No, I would say I think it kind of relies on what she's able to get done before she actually runs, something that is going to inherently be hamstrung by the rest of the Democratic Party. And that's unfortunate, because ultimately speaking, the ability for progressives to, as we were talking about earlier, make this kind of portfolio of things they've been able to do, like projects they've gotten done within the Democratic Party system and just our government altogether, is very limited. It's possible that she'll be running just on this idea that she is this progressive without being able to really enact any sort of these big policies that would, Green New Deal, whether or not it goes far enough is debatable, but it's certainly better than what we're doing right now. But we're just not going to be allowed to see any of this stuff in motion, any of this practical leftism in motion, until theoretically we're at the point where, well, yeah, maybe we'll vote for her for president. And I think that system in and of itself is just not built to engender any real trust in people in a way that is, manageable, right? It just prevents us from ever having any real sort of like case evidence to point to that says, hey, you know what? Yeah, this is what the left does, even the center left or whatever you want to say AOC is, when they're given any kind of power.
Right. Just a few more IMs and that's the show. Illuminati kids, but on the flip side, would you pay for a dressing down from Pelosi, Binder? I see what you did there.
Don't kink shame. Don't kink shame on the fun half.
Thank you for coming to my defense there. Crowder's disapproving father. If you dive deep enough into any conspiracy theory, you always find anti-Semitic tropes. See blood libel and QAnon's adrenochrome. Right. And the final IM of the day. Sorry, folks, I'm gonna be a little. Got to do this one. This one's from Binder Dad. Do you think Bezos bought MGM so he had full unlimited access to the Celebrity Apprentice outtakes? Trump doesn't own the rights to them, and according to Tom Arnold, there's lots of dirty stuff in them. Well, Dad, first of all, I would say don't believe everything Tom Arnold says. Second of all, I don't think that's the reason Bezos bought it, because at the end of the day, he's a guy driven by how he can make the most money. And if he really wanted these tapes, he would have bought them when they would have been the most impactful, and that would have been anywhere between like 1 and 5 years ago. I mean, are there something on those tapes? Maybe could Jeff Bezos, who will own them very soon once this deal is done, release them? Sure. But there's a reason why they weren't already released. The guy who made who's that guy? The big reality TV show guy. He's super rich too. He's the one who put together Apprentice. He's the producer on it.
Mark Burnett.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he has some legal authority over it that stopped MGM from releasing them. So I mean,
it would be great if it leaked. If that leaked, oh my, I would torrent that the very second I heard about it.
Absolutely, we would love it, but I just don't think that's the reason Bezos is doing any of this. Yeah,
because he's a monopolist. I think is the easy answer.
Sorry, Pops, but at the end of the day, please don't listen to Tom Arnold.
Probably just makes it easier to like simultaneously release movies in theaters and on Amazon once we're probably back in quarantine and movie theaters close again. Because I was surprised by Amazon's inability to like acquire more movies to release simultaneously, specifically on Amazon. You know, especially while HBO was doing it with HBO Plus. Like that, I'm sure they felt like they were missing out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is Bezos in some leaked emails or something leaked, whether it was like a in-person account of what happened. But Bezos, when they were like creating Amazon Prime original series or whatever, Bezos basically like took out like a spreadsheet to show how he approaches creative work, still like a fucking business guy. He took out a spreadsheet which detailed all the necessary like tropes needed to make a successful TV series. And he was like, listen, you just follow this outline here, this blueprint, and that's it. You have a winning show. It's not that hard. I've done the math. I've done the and I've done the work here, and it's all right here, which shows like these guys just don't get it. They don't get it at all. And he had to go out and buy a movie studio because can you guys name a successful Amazon series? Maybe there's like one, maybe two. I don't know.
Is the Invincible Amazon?
Man, they don't make any of them. They just buy them from other production companies.
Right.
Yeah, you don't. They don't feel like Amazon.
Right.
Wait, they made that one Transparent. That was their big one. Amazon, like that was Transparent was their big one. That was years ago, and people really liked that. Ever since then, I can't think of anything else that they've been able to do. Now it seems like mostly what they do is either purchase the rights to things being produced in other countries, or distribute them here, or that haven't been picked up for distribution in movie theaters to distribute originally, or like remakes of things that they're making. Like when they remade Utopia,
superhero show.
The Boys is good.
Oh, The Boys, but I don't think is that theirs, or is that one they purchased?
Well,
I don't
know. But also then there was that weird one with the Nazi hunters.
Oh right, that's
very bizarre.
That's one of those shows though that are you talking about the one where like what if
okay, Brendan and I have to run, so
okay, we gotta jump. All right, so that's the show for today, folks. YouTube.com/Matt Binder tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time. There will be a live show on my end. You can catch it also at doomedcast.com if you missed the live one. Subscribe to the channel too, youtube.com/Matt Binder. Nomiki is coming up at 3, right, guys?
Yep.
And Brandon, you want to promote your where can people catch the discourse?
Oh, me. Okay, yeah, you can catch the discourse at Twitch.
Say the wrong thing.
It doesn't matter. You can catch the discourse at twitch.com/the discourse. There you can catch an interview we did yesterday with Black Left AF. You can catch the podcast on all your normal podcast platforms like SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, all the good places.
Cool. All right. And tonight,
check out our Peacock show, which I'm going to shoot right now. All right.
There we go.
Peace, guys.
See you, folks. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice